My name is Donna, and the night my parents told me there was no room for me, something inside me broke, and something else was born. The house was glowing that December evening. Strings of lights twinkled along the porch. A tall tree filled the living room, ornaments glittering with every breath of heat from the vents. The air smelled of cinnamon, cloves, and roast chicken. From the outside it looked like warmth. It looked like family. Inside, laughter swirled around the table. My parents busied themselves in the kitchen, voices cheerful, as if the whole night was a celebration of love. My brother Michael and his wife Cassandra were already seated, their children climbing in and out of chairs, leaving sticky fingerprints on Grandma's old china. There was music playing faintly on the radio. The scene would have seemed perfect, if not for the hole where I should have been. When I entered, I realized instantly. The table was full. Every place set. Every chair taken. My name was nowhere. My plate did not exist. I stood awkwardly near the wall, waiting for someone to notice. No one did. I cleared my throat gently. Should I grab a chair from the den? My mother looked up, her smile cool and dismissive. Donna, there's no room. We're already full. No room. 2 words, but they struck like a blade. I had grown up in that house. I had folded laundry on that very couch while my brother watched television. I had scrubbed floors on Saturdays, balanced a tray of lemonade during summer barbecues, brought flowers to my mother on her birthdays. But for me, her daughter, there was no space at her table. My father carved the chicken, his voice casual. You understand, don't you? We have guests. Family. You'll manage. Family. As though I was not. I stood there, hands tightening at my sides. My brother caught my eye for half a second and then looked away, as if my presence embarrassed him. Cassandra smirked faintly, always pleased when I was diminished. Their children tore open gift bags, paper flying like confetti. Everyone belonged. Everyone had a place. Everyone but me. I thought of all the years I had made room for them. When Michael failed a class, I helped him study late into the night. When Cassandra couldn't find a babysitter, I left work early to take care of her children. When my parents needed bills paid, I chipped in from my small salary, even when it meant skipping meals. I had carved myself thinner and thinner to keep them whole. And still they said there was no room. When dessert came, I tried once more. Maybe now there's a seat. Cassandra cut me off, her tone sharp, wrapped in honey. Donna, you're young. You'll figure it out. Let the older ones sit comfortably. Be helpful instead. The older ones. My parents. My brother. His wife. Even their children were given priority above me. My cheeks flushed with heat. The laughter returned, closing me out again as though I was wallpaper. I slipped into my coat. No one noticed. I walked to the porch where cold air slapped my skin and the snow glistened beneath the streetlights. I stood in the dark, looking back through the window at the glowing table where I had no place. The laughter carried faintly, muffled by glass, cruel in its sweetness. They had pushed me aside as if I were nothing. But I wasn't nothing. Standing under the frozen sky, I thought of every time they had dismissed me. My mother telling me, "Don't dream too big." My father reminding me, "Michael will inherit, you'll be fine." Cassandra whispering, "You'll never be more than the spare." I remembered all of it, and the humiliation hardened into something sharper than pain. If there is no room for me here, I thought, then I will make my own room. Bigger. Stronger. Unshakable. I walked down the street that night with snow crunching under my boots, a fire burning behind my ribs. I promised myself one thing. I would build a life so solid, so undeniable, that one day they would come to me for space. And when they did, I would be the one holding the key. That night, as the stars blinked coldly overhead, I swore my revenge. Not through screaming. Not through rage. Through success. Through patience. Through truth. One day, the same parents who told me there was no room would beg me for a chair. And I would hand them the deed. Not to a dining table, not to a house, but to a retirement home with my name signed across the front. Because I had no idea how soon that chance would come, and how desperate they would be when the walls they had built against me finally crumbled. The night they told me there was no room should have been enough. But betrayal never comes once. It drips steady until you drown in it. The next morning I returned to my apartment, a tiny space above a laundromat that always smelled faintly of detergent and steam. I brewed weak coffee and stared out the frosted window. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. For a moment, I let myself hope it was an apology. It wasn't. Donna, thank you for leaving quietly last night. It was easier for everyone. You need to start thinking about moving on with your life. We cannot keep making space for you forever. Making space. As if every sacrifice I had made, every bill I had paid, every errand I had run, every favor I had granted, was their generosity toward me. Later that week, I stopped by their house to pick up some old boxes I had stored in the garage. Cassandra answered the door. She leaned against the frame, her smile thin and cruel. Your mother said you should call first before dropping by. This isn't your home anymore. The words stung sharper than the December wind. Not your home anymore. I stepped into the garage quickly, not trusting myself to speak. The boxes were where I had left them, labeled with faded ink. Donna's books. Donna's winter coats. Donna's college papers. I bent down to lift one, but Cassandra's voice followed me in, sweet and sharp like broken glass. You know, you should be grateful. Michael is the one with real responsibilities. The kids. The mortgage. The job that matters. You float around. You take up space. That's why your parents said what they said. Her words echoed the night before. No room. No space. Worthlessness wrapped in politeness. I carried the box to my car, my arms aching, my heart heavier. As I placed it in the trunk, I caught sight of my parents in the living room through the window. They sat with Michael, smiling warmly. My mother handed him an envelope. He opened it, beaming, and clapped my father on the back. I froze. Later, when Michael boasted to me on the phone, I learned the truth. My parents had co-signed a loan for him. They had emptied part of their savings to help him buy a second property. A vacation home near the lake. For him there was room. For his wife. For his children. For his comfort. But for me? Nothing. Not even a seat at the table. That night I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my boxes stacked against the wall. My life felt like it had been reduced to cardboard. I replayed memories in my mind like broken film. My mother telling Michael, "We'll always help you, son." My father saying to me, "You're strong, Donna. You'll manage." As if strength meant I deserved nothing. As if independence excused their neglect. The betrayal pressed deeper when the phone rang again. It was my father. His tone was brisk, businesslike. "Donna, your mother and I have been talking. We think it's time you considered finding somewhere more permanent. Somewhere you belong. You're nearly 30. It's not healthy to keep hanging around here. Somewhere you belong." I wanted to scream that I had belonged once, before Michael's children, before Cassandra's smirk, before their pride in their golden son consumed every corner of our house. But instead I bit my tongue until I tasted iron. When the call ended, I sat in silence, trembling. It wasn't just that they had no room for me. It was that they had chosen deliberately to cut me out. To invest in Michael's future and dismiss mine. To spend their love like currency and decide I wasn't worth the cost. I thought back to my promise on the snowy street. If there was no room for me, I would make my own. But now the promise burned hotter. It would not be enough to build my life elsewhere. I would need to build it so high, so undeniable, that when the walls of their world cracked, they would have no choice but to come to me. And when they did, I would not be the daughter begging for space. I would be the woman with the deed in her hand. Because only a week later, an envelope arrived in my own mailbox. Not from my parents, but from a lawyer. And inside was a document that would change everything. A retirement home deed already signed in my name. The envelope sat heavy on my lap. I opened it slowly, afraid that if I moved too fast the words inside might vanish. The lawyer's letter was precise, formal. By the terms of Margaret Hale's estate, the enclosed deed is transferred to her granddaughter Donna. The retirement home property and its associated accounts are now in your name. My grandmother. Quiet, sharp-eyed, never wasteful with words. I remembered sitting at her kitchen table as a girl, listening to her stories while she stirred tea. She always noticed what others missed. She once said, "Donna, fairness rarely lives in the open. You have to build it yourself." Now she had built fairness for me in the shape of a deed. I unfolded the document carefully. My name gleamed in black ink. It wasn't just a house, it was a future. A retirement home in the center of town, already running, already funded. Dozens of rooms, nurses, staff, residents. A place of dignity for people my parents' age. And now I was the owner. I stared at the papers, my chest rising and falling in disbelief. My parents had told me there was no room. My grandmother had left me a building full of rooms. The contrast was almost poetic. But part of me was cautious. Why me? Why not Michael, the golden child? Why not Cassandra, with her endless hunger for status? I found the answer tucked into a smaller envelope inside. A handwritten note from Grandma. Donna, I have seen how they treat you. I have seen the empty chairs, the forgotten invitations, the way they place you last. You gave me time when no one else did. You fixed my radio. You walked with me when the others were too busy. I know they will tell you that you are nothing. This deed is proof you are not. Protect it. Use it when the time comes. The day will come sooner than you think. Her words burned into me like light. That night, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. Julia, my closest friend since college, came over when she heard my voice shake on the phone. She read the note twice, her eyes widening. Donna, she whispered, this is more than inheritance. This is strategy. Your grandmother must have known they would turn on you. I nodded slowly. But if I show them this now, they'll find a way to twist it. They'll call me a thief. They'll say Grandma was confused. Then don't show them yet, Julia said. Gather everything. Make it airtight. If you ever need to reveal it, you'll be untouchable. Her words steadied me. So I began gathering proof. First, I met with the lawyer, Mr. Callahan, whose signature was at the bottom of the deed transfer. His office smelled of leather and old paper. He confirmed every detail. Your grandmother was deliberate, he said. She excluded your parents and your brother by name. She insisted the property would only ever belong to you. She said, and I quote, Donna will understand why. He gave me copies of the signed statements from witnesses, nurses and staff at the retirement home who had been present when Grandma signed. They confirmed she was of sound mind. Next, I visited the home itself. The building rose tall and steady, brick walls touched by ivy. Inside, the halls smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish. Residents greeted me warmly when I introduced myself as the new owner. The staff nodded with respect. Your grandmother loved this place, one nurse told me. She said it gave her peace to know it was cared for. I walked the halls slowly, touching the walls, hearing laughter drift from the rec room. It wasn't just property. It was legacy. I kept notes of everything. Signed documents, photos of the building, testimonies from staff. I created folders on my laptop, backing up each file twice. Meanwhile, the texts from my family kept coming. My mother. Don't come around this weekend. We're busy with Michael's family. My father. You should be more independent. Stop clinging to us. Cassandra. Maybe it's time you learned we all move on without you. Every word they sent I saved. Evidence of neglect. Evidence of exclusion. Julia leaned over my shoulder one evening as I compiled the folder. One day, she said, when they try to take from you again, you'll have this. They won't be able to deny it. But part of me still trembled. What did Grandma mean when she wrote, the day will come sooner than you think? That night my question was answered. Because as I was finishing my notes, my phone buzzed with a message from Cassandra. No greeting. No explanation. Just words sharp as a knife. By the way, your parents are looking into retirement homes. They don't have enough savings. They'll probably ask you for help. Don't embarrass yourself by pretending you can offer anything. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. They were already searching. Already desperate. Because in less than a month, the parents who told me there was no room for me would be knocking on my door, asking if I could help them find space in a retirement home. And I would be waiting, the deed already in my hand. The text from Cassandra replayed in my head all night. They don't have enough savings. They'll probably ask you for help. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my grandmother's words echoing. The day will come sooner than you think. She had been right. The day was rushing toward me like a storm cloud. By morning I had made a decision. I wasn't going to wait blindly for my parents to appear at my door. I would prepare. Julia came over again that afternoon. She found me sitting at the kitchen table, the deed spread in front of me, files stacked in neat piles. You look like a general before battle, she said, setting down 2 coffees. Maybe I am, I replied. Because when they come, I don't want to be scrambling. I want to be ready. She sat across from me, her voice firm. Then you need more than papers. You need allies. She was right. So I started making calls. First, Mr. Callahan, the lawyer who had overseen the transfer. I asked him if he would stand by me should anyone contest the deed. He didn't hesitate. Of course. Your grandmother was very clear. I have every document, every witness. If your parents try to argue, I'll shut it down before it reaches a courtroom. Next, I spoke again with the retirement home director, Mrs. Hensley. She was a kind woman with gray hair pinned neatly, her voice calm but strong. When I explained that my parents might come asking for space, she nodded. It happens often. Families think they can bend rules or pressure us. But ownership is ownership, Donna. If you want control, you have it. No one can override that. Her reassurance settled something deep inside me. Julia suggested one more step. You need someone who knows the financial side. If your parents try to guilt you saying they can't afford care, you'll need numbers. You'll need proof that they spent their money elsewhere. So I met with a financial advisor, an old friend of Julia's named Eric. I showed him what I knew. The loan my parents co-signed for Michael, the accounts they drained to buy him his vacation house, the expenses they flaunted while telling me there was no room. Eric raised an eyebrow. This paints a clear pattern. They chose where their money went, and it wasn't toward their own future security. If they ask you for help, you'll have every right to point out that choice. Piece by piece, the net formed around me. Papers, testimonies, allies. For the first time, I felt the weight shift. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the one holding the keys. But even with all that preparation, doubt whispered at night. I remembered sitting on that porch in the snow, listening to their laughter through the window. A part of me still longed for belonging, for family, for love without conditions. Julia noticed my silence one evening. She reached across the table, her hand warm over mine. Donna, listen to me. They've shown you who they are. This isn't about cruelty anymore. It's about boundaries. You're not shutting them out. You're holding them accountable. That's the difference. Her words stuck. Boundaries. Accountability. 2 things my family had never practiced. The call came sooner than I expected. A week later, my mother's number flashed on my phone. I let it ring once, twice before I answered. Her voice was unusually soft. Donna, your father and we need to talk. Things have been difficult lately. Your father's health, our finances. We wondered if you might know of any retirement options. Somewhere safe, somewhere comfortable. I swallowed hard, forcing my tone steady. You mean a retirement home? Yes, she said quickly. One that we could afford. We heard from Cassandra you've been involved with one somehow? I nearly laughed. Cassandra's gossip had carried further than she realized. I might, I said carefully. But we'll need to meet in person. When the call ended, Julia leaned in, eyes sharp. This is it. The moment Grandma prepared you for. I nodded slowly. My grandmother's handwriting burned in my mind. Protect it. Use it when the time comes. Because 2 days later, my parents sat across from me at my kitchen table, their voices honeyed with desperation. And I slid the retirement home deed onto the table between us, watching their faces freeze in disbelief. My parents sat stiff at my kitchen table, their voices softer than I had ever heard them. For years they had spoken with sharp edges, reminding me of my place, reminding me I was the extra. But now desperation had shaved their pride thin. We need help, Donna, my mother said. Her hands twisted in her lap. Your father's blood pressure is climbing, the stairs are too much, and the money, it's not stretching the way it used to. My father, who had never once admitted weakness, kept his eyes on the table. We're looking into retirement communities. A place where we'll be cared for. Safe. Comfortable. We thought maybe you might know of one. I studied them carefully. These were the same parents who had told me there was no room for me in the house where I grew up. The same parents who had emptied savings to help Michael buy a second property, while I scraped rent together above a laundromat. Now their voices trembled. Their eyes darted to me as though I held salvation. I slid the deed across the table slowly. Their eyes followed the motion like hawks. The paper landed between us with a soft, deliberate thud. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is the deed to Haleside Retirement Residence. Grandma left it to me. I am the owner." Their faces froze. My mother's lips parted. My father's brows knit together. They looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. My mother recovered first, a brittle laugh escaping her. "Donna, you must be joking. That cannot be real." "It's real," I replied calmly. "The lawyer confirmed it. Witnesses signed. The bank has registered it. This isn't just paper. It's truth." Silence fell heavy. I let it linger. Then I leaned forward, my voice dropping lower. "Do you remember last Christmas? When you told me there was no room for me? When I stood outside in the snow while you laughed at the table?" Their eyes flickered. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father cleared his throat. "Well," I said, tapping the deed, "now the situation has reversed. You are the ones who need space. And I am the one who decides if there is room." For a moment no one spoke. The power had shifted fully. I had prepared for this. With Julia's help, I had organized every piece of evidence. The loan they co-signed for Michael, the money funneled into his second home, the text messages where they told me I should move on. And I had testimonies from the staff at Haleside, praising Grandma's clarity and intent when she signed the transfer. If they tried to contest, they would lose. If they tried to guilt me, I had receipts. If they tried to shout me down, I would stand silent, binder in hand, letting truth outweigh noise. But revenge wasn't only about legal victory. It was about timing, exposure, balance. I wanted them to feel what I had felt, the sting of being dismissed in front of others. So I built the counterplan. Step 1. I would not refuse them outright. That would make me cruel, the villain in their story. Instead, I would hold out the possibility of space on my terms. Step 2. I would require them to face the truth before witnesses. I arranged with Mrs. Hensley, the director, to host a family tour of Haleside. My parents would walk the halls believing they might secure a place. At the end, the staff would confirm the truth. All ownership rested with me. Their future would sit in my hands, and every eye in the building would see it. Step 3. I would make the contrast clear. I planned to bring Julia and Miriam, our old neighbor who had witnessed their favoritism for years. They would see my parents confronted not only with the law but with the judgment of people outside the family, the very people they had tried to impress. I rehearsed the conversation in my head like lines in a play. "You told me there was no room. But this place has dozens of rooms, and every one of them belongs to me. If you want space here, you will treat me with respect. If you cannot, you will find yourselves on a waiting list like strangers." The thought of their faces at that moment steadied me more than sleep ever could. That night, Julia asked quietly, "Donna, do you want to forgive them? Or do you want them to hurt?" I paused. The truth was complicated. A piece of me still longed for warmth, for family dinners without humiliation. But another piece, larger, sharper, wanted justice. Not vengeance born of rage, but balance. A lesson they could never forget. So I answered honestly, "I don't want to destroy them. I want them to understand. I want them to feel for once what it's like to have no room." Because the next morning, as I confirmed the tour with Mrs. Hensley, my phone rang again. It was Cassandra. Her voice dripped with poison. "Donna," she said, "you think you're clever. But you forget I know how to ruin you. If you don't give them what they want, I'll make sure the whole family sees you as a monster." The morning of the tour dawned gray and heavy. The sky pressed low with winter clouds. I dressed deliberately. A dark coat, clean lines, calm authority. Not the forgotten daughter in hand-me-downs. The owner. The woman with the deed. Julia drove me to Haleside. In the back seat lay the binder with every document, every testimony. Proof. I touched the leather cover, steadying myself. "Today isn't about shouting," I whispered. "It's about showing." When we arrived, Mrs. Hensley greeted us warmly. The staff bustled about, preparing coffee and cookies for the family visit. Everything looked polished, professional. Residents strolled the halls, smiling at us. The air smelled of fresh bread from the kitchen. This place radiated care, dignity, safety, everything my parents claimed to need. I didn't have long to wait. At precisely noon, my parents arrived. My mother wore pearls, her lips pressed thin. My father leaned on his cane, proud even in frailty. Cassandra walked behind them, her heels clicking like daggers. Of course she came. She couldn't resist. Donna, my mother said brightly, her tone false as glass, thank you for arranging this. I nodded calmly. Let's begin. The tour unfolded smoothly at first. Mrs. Hensley showed them the common areas, the gardens, the rooms with wide windows and soft chairs. My parents nodded approvingly, murmuring about the comfort, the safety, the community. I walked silently beside them, watching, waiting. But Cassandra was restless. She whispered in my mother's ear, smirked at me when my father admired the library. Her eyes gleamed with mischief, as though she knew a secret. We stopped in the dining hall. My father settled into a chair, sighing. This feels right, he said. Safe. My mother smiled faintly, relief flickering in her eyes. It was the moment I had prepared for. I stepped forward, the binder in my hands. There is something you should understand before you make plans, I said. This residence belongs to me. Grandma left it in my name. If you want a room here, it will be on my terms. The words landed like thunder. My mother's smile froze. My father's face went slack. Cassandra, however, only laughed. A high, sharp laugh that drew the attention of every staff member in the room. See, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is what I warned you about. Donna doesn't care about you. She just wants to humiliate you. She's using Grandma's gift to make herself look powerful. You'll never get a room here unless you crawl. Gasps rose from some of the staff nearby. My parents' faces crumpled between pride and desperation. For a heartbeat, doubt flickered in the air. That's when Cassandra reached into her purse. She pulled out a stack of papers and slammed them on the table. These, she declared, are statements from relatives and friends who know the truth. That Donna manipulated Grandma. That she tricked her into signing away the property. Everyone will see she's no savior. She's a fraud. The room tilted. This was the pivot I hadn't expected. Cassandra had prepared her own spectacle. Julia shot me a quick glance. Don't panic. Mrs. Hensley frowned, lifting the papers with practiced caution. My parents leaned forward eagerly, desperate for anything that put the power back in their hands. My voice wanted to shake, but I kept it steady. Forgery, I said evenly. Desperation always writes in haste. If you look closer, you'll see. But inside my chest burned. Cassandra wasn't bluffing entirely. Some of those signatures looked familiar. My cousins, old neighbors, even a former coworker. She had gone to them, spun her story, and collected their names. This wasn't just a challenge. It was a trap. If she spread those papers beyond this room, the story of my victory could collapse into scandal. For a moment I thought of my grandmother's note. Protect it. Use it when the time comes. The time was now, but the protection might not be enough. Because just as I prepared to open my binder and counter her lies, Cassandra pulled out her phone, raised it high and announced, "We're live. The whole family is watching this right now." Cassandra's voice cut through the air like a blade. "We're live," she said, her phone lifted high, the red recording light glowing. "Everyone's watching. The family will see who you really are, Donna." A chill ran down my spine, but I refused to flinch. My parents leaned forward, suddenly emboldened by the invisible audience. My mother's voice sharpened. "Yes, let them see. Let them hear how you use your grandmother's kindness to punish us." The staff and residents in the dining hall exchanged nervous looks. Mrs. Hensley frowned, clearly uncomfortable with Cassandra broadcasting from inside the residence. Julia's eyes locked on mine, silently urging, "This is the moment. Don't let her control the story." I took one slow breath, then stepped forward so Cassandra's camera captured my face clearly. My voice was calm, steady, deliberate. "You want the family to see? Fine. Let them see." I placed my binder on the table and opened it page by page. "Here," I said, holding up the first document, "is my grandmother's will. Signed, witnessed, legally sealed. She excluded both of you by name and left this property to me. Not out of pity, not out of confusion, out of choice." I laid it down. Cassandra's smirk faltered. "Here," I continued, lifting the next page, "is a statement from Mr. Callahan, the attorney who oversaw the transfer. He confirms my grandmother was of sound mind, clear in her decision. She even told him in her own words, "Donna will understand why." I laid that down too. My father shifted uncomfortably. "And here," I said, my voice rising, "are affidavits from the staff at Haleside. They witnessed the signing. They testified that my grandmother wanted me to own this residence, that she trusted me, that she knew exactly what she was doing." I set the stack down. The silence was deafening. Cassandra scoffed, her hand tightening on her phone. "You're just parading papers. No one believes that. Everyone knows you manipulated her." But I was ready. I pulled out the final envelope. My grandmother's handwritten note, the one that had steadied me through every doubt. I held it up so the camera could see the familiar script. "Donna, I have seen how they treat you. I have seen the empty chairs, the forgotten invitations, the way they place you last. This deed is proof you are not nothing. Protect it. Use it when the time comes." I laid it down, my fingers firm. My voice cut through the tension. "Well, the time has come." Gasps rippled through the staff and residents gathered. Some of the nurses nodded quietly. Julia's eyes shone with fierce pride. Cassandra sputtered, her voice breaking. That could be fake." Mrs. Hensley stepped forward then, her tone sharp. "Enough. I have seen these originals. I stood with Margaret Hale in her final days. She trusted Donna, not you. This is her legacy. You are trespassing on it." Cassandra's hand shook. The live feed wobbled. My parents' faces drained of color. I stepped closer, leaning just enough so the camera caught every word. "Mother, father, last Christmas you told me there was no room for me. Tonight the whole family sees the truth. You are the ones without room. And I am the one who decides if you will have it." My mother gasped, clutching her pearls. My father muttered, "You can't talk to us this way." "Yes, I can," I said firmly. "Because I hold the deed. Because Grandma gave me the power you never believed I deserved. And because you need me now more than I ever needed you." Cassandra tried to speak, but Julia snatched the phone from her hand with a swift motion. "Broadcast's over," Julia said coldly. She ended the live stream with a single tap. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. My parents sat stunned, staring at me like strangers. The staff shifted, waiting. The residents murmured. And for the first time in my life, the room belonged to me. Because just as I thought the battle was over, Cassandra hissed through clenched teeth. "If you deny them space here, Donna, you'll be the one who looks like a monster. Everyone will turn on you. Are you ready to carry that weight?" For a long breath, no one moved. My grandmother's words still lingered in the air, heavy as stone. "This deed is proof you are not nothing." Then the room erupted. Residents whispered to each other. Staff exchanged glances. My parents sat stiff, pale, refusing to look at me. Cassandra paced like a caged animal, her eyes burning with fury. "You think this makes you powerful," she spat. "It makes you cruel. Look at them." She pointed to my parents, her voice rising. "They're old. They're scared. And you're standing here gloating." My father slammed his palm on the table. The sound cracked like a whip. "Is this what you wanted, Donna? To humiliate us? To flaunt some piece of paper while your family sits in need?" The words cut deep, but I did not flinch. "No," I said calmly. "What I wanted was a place at the table. You told me I had no room. Now you sit here, and I am the one who decides if there's space. That isn't cruelty, it's balance." Gasps stirred around us. A resident near the back whispered, "Good for her." Another nodded silently. Cassandra barked a bitter laugh. "Balance? You're pathetic. You're just the forgotten daughter with a lucky break. You'll never be more than that." Julia stepped forward, her voice sharp as glass. "Enough, Cassandra. You broadcasted lies to the family, waved forged papers, and tried to trap Donna. Everyone saw it. You don't get to stand here and call her pathetic." Mrs. Hensley added her voice, firm and authoritative. "This residence belongs to Donna. That is fact. If you continue to disrupt, I'll have security escort you out." Cassandra's smirk faltered, but her eyes still burned. She turned to my parents desperately. "Say something. Don't let her do this to you." My mother's lips trembled. She looked at me for the first time, her eyes searching. "Donna, you wouldn't really deny us a place here, would you?" The question was quiet, but every ear in the room leaned toward it. I met her gaze, my chest tight. For years I had begged silently for recognition, for love, for anything more than scraps. And now at last I had it, the power to decide. I won't deny you care, I said slowly, deliberately. But you will enter this place not as masters, not as people who decide who belongs and who does not. You will enter under my rules. Respect. Honesty. No more dismissing me. No more pretending I am nothing. The room went still again. My father's jaw clenched. My mother's shoulders sagged. Cassandra shook her head, whispering curses under her breath. Then from the back of the hall, an elderly resident raised his voice. She's right. Respect goes both ways. If you don't give it, you can't expect it back. Others nodded. The tide was visible. The staff's eyes softened toward me. Even Mrs. Hensley's lips curved with a faint smile. Cassandra hissed. You're turning strangers against your own blood. I turned to her, my voice quiet but unyielding. No, Cassandra. I'm turning truth against lies. My parents said nothing. My father's face was gray with humiliation. My mother dabbed her eyes with a trembling handkerchief. For the first time in my life they sat in silence, not me, them. The weight of years shifted. Because just when the room seemed to settle, Cassandra's phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a message notification that made my blood run cold. The preview line read, Donna doesn't know the whole truth about Grandma's will. The next morning, sunlight cut through my curtains, but it did nothing to ease the weight in my chest. The echoes of yesterday still clung to me. My parents' silence, Cassandra's venom, the murmurs of residents siding with me. For the first time I had stood in power. Yet Cassandra's phone buzzing with that message haunted me. Donna doesn't know the whole truth about Grandma's will. I made coffee and sat at the table staring at the steam. Julia arrived soon after, her hair still messy from lack of sleep. You were brilliant yesterday, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. No one will forget it. But I shook my head. Cassandra isn't finished. That message, what truth is left that I don't know? Julia frowned. Maybe it's just bait. Don't let her pull you back into her games. But I couldn't let it go. I had learned too well. Cassandra thrived on poison, yes, but sometimes poison carried a seed of fact. By noon, Mr. Callahan, the lawyer, called to confirm the paperwork. Everything is legally sound, Donna. The deed, the will, the transfer, all airtight. Cassandra can waive forged papers, but she has no standing. Then why, I asked quietly, would someone claim I don't know the whole truth? He hesitated. Margaret, your grandmother, was thorough. There were addendums. Not everything was read aloud at the first session. There may be sealed instructions. Sealed instructions. My pulse quickened. Later that day, I drove to Callahan's office. His shelves lined with law books, the faint smell of cedar in the air. He unlocked a cabinet and pulled out a slim folder. These were marked for you alone, to be opened only if contested. I wasn't sure the time was right. Now perhaps it is. Inside was another handwritten note from Grandma. Her script was firm, deliberate. Donna, if you are reading this, then the family has tested you as I feared they would. I left you Haleside because you gave me your time. But there is more. The accounts tied to this property are larger than they appear. I place funds aside not only for the residents but for you, because I knew they would drain themselves helping Michael. When they come to you desperate, remember, you owe them nothing. Still, mercy is yours to choose. I read the words twice, my heart pounding. Grandma hadn't just given me the deed. She had hidden financial security within it. Millions in trust accounts tied to the property. Money my parents didn't know existed. Julia leaned over my shoulder, her breath sharp. Donna, do you realize what this means? You don't just own the building. You own the future of everyone inside it. You control not only space but stability. The realization staggered me. My parents had begged for a room. Cassandra had tried to brand me cruel. But none of them knew the full scope of what I held. That evening my mother called again. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Donna, your father isn't well. He's restless, anxious. We need to know, do we have a place with you? I looked at the folder in my lap. Grandma's words still burning. Mercy is yours to choose. I'll decide soon, I said, my tone careful. But it won't be like before. If you come here, you come under my rules. She sniffled, then whispered, anything, Donna. We'll do anything. When the call ended, I sat in the quiet, my fingers tracing Grandma's script. I had the power to deny them, to make them feel the emptiness I had lived for years. Or I could allow them in, but only if they acknowledged me truly for the first time in my life. Because just as I resolved to think carefully, Julia's phone buzzed with a new message, from an unknown number. The words chilled me to the bone. If Donna chooses mercy, she will lose everything. Ask her lawyer what he hasn't told her. The message on Julia's phone echoed in my mind all night. If Donna chooses mercy, she will lose everything. Ask her lawyer what he hasn't told her. By morning, my nerves were raw. I called Mr. Callahan and asked him to meet me at Haleside. He arrived promptly, his briefcase in hand, his face calm as always. Mr. Callahan, I said, my voice sharper than intended. What haven't you told me? He hesitated, then sighed. Donna, your grandmother was clever. She didn't just give you the deed and the accounts. She added a safeguard clause. If you give up controlling authority, if you sign away even partial ownership to appease family, you forfeit the trust accounts. The funds would dissolve into a general estate pool, where your parents could contest them. She wanted to protect you from manipulation. The weight of his words settled over me. If I caved to guilt, if I tried to share power, I would lose everything. The building, the accounts, the security, all gone. Grandma's voice echoed in my head. Mercy is yours to choose. But mercy did not mean surrender. Mercy could be structure, boundaries, even dignity. That afternoon, I invited my parents back to Haleside. Cassandra came too, of course, her eyes sharp, searching for weakness. The staff gathered quietly at the edges of the room, curious. I laid the folder on the table. You asked me for a place, I began. And I have considered. The answer is yes, you may live here. But not as owners. Not as people who dismiss me. You will be residents under the same rules as everyone else. You will sign the same contracts, pay what you can, and treat me with respect. If you break that, you leave. My father's face hardened. You'd reduce us to residents in our granddaughter's building? I met his glare. Yes, because that is what you are. Residents. Not rulers. My mother's eyes filled with tears. She reached for my hand, but I didn't move. Donna, she whispered. We were wrong. We should have made room for you. Please just don't turn us away. For the first time in my life, I heard the words I had needed. We were wrong. I nodded slowly. You will have a room. But understand this, you told me I didn't belong at your table. Now you sit at mine. And this table has rules. The silence that followed was complete. Even Cassandra had no words. In the weeks that followed, the shift was undeniable. My parents moved into Haleside. They walked the halls carefully, adjusting to a life no longer of control, but of humility. Residents whispered about the story, about the daughter who became the heir, about the reversal of fortune written in her grandmother's hand. Cassandra faded to the sidelines. Her threats lost their teeth once it was clear the law and the will stood unshaken. She tried to poison relatives against me, but it rang hollow. They had all seen her lies collapse in public. As for me, I walked those halls not as the unwanted daughter but as the woman my grandmother had trusted all along. Each time I passed a door with a resident's name, I remembered that cold Christmas night. No room for me. Now I held dozens of rooms, rooms filled with dignity, rooms filled with life. And every time I saw my parents sit quietly in the dining hall, I felt no triumph, no gloating, only balance. Justice. Because revenge in the end is not about cruelty. It is about truth revealed in the open. I am Donna. My parents told me there was no room for me. They erased me, humiliated me, and gave everything to my brother while I scraped by. But when they came begging for space, I handed them the deed to the retirement home they would live in under my rules. To you listening now, if anyone has ever told you that you are nothing, remember this. Their dismissal is not the measure of your worth. You can build your own room, your own table, your own legacy. And when the time comes, you will not need to scream. The truth will speak louder than their denial. So here is my lesson for you. Your worth is not decided by who makes space for you. It is decided by the space you create for yourself. And when the day comes that they ask for your room, you will hold the key. If my story struck a chord with you, subscribe for more. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been told you don't belong? And remember, the best revenge isn't rage. It's rising so high that those who erased you must knock at your door.